Last year, it was Brett Yormark circling the Pac-12 waters, waiting for that league to fall apart to scoop up the four corner schools and bring them to the Big 12. Feels kind of similar this year, only now it's the ACC and not the Pac-12. Yes, Brett Yormark was talking expansion once again, this time with the Arizona Board of Regents. We're going to get to all of his comments and what it all means, if his strategy will work, here in this video. So we turn to our friend John Wilner, who covers the Pac-12 and college football on the West Coast like nobody else out there. He had a great report detailing everything Brett Yormark said and talked about with the Arizona Board of Regents. Yes, there was expansion, and we will talk plenty about Brett Yormark's expansion comments. But it was also somewhat of a warning shot toward Arizona and Arizona State to say, hey, Big 12 wide, we all need to be as committed as possible right now to survive in what the sport has turned into. So this is from John Wilner. He says, Yormark spoke of the need for innovation and bold decisions, but was understandably short on specifics at the Fulton Center on Arizona State's campus. Because of ongoing court cases, nobody knows exactly what form college athletics will take in the second half of the decade and beyond, but this much was clear. Every path to success will require a significant financial commitment by Arizona and Arizona State, by their athletic directors, their presidents, their donors, and their governing board. This is not a new sentiment. It was not long ago that Baylor athletic director Mack Rhoades went on 365 Sports and spoke about how, look, we've got to be better at football. Yes, we have basketball. Basketball is great. We've got to be better at football, which seems clearly like a message from the top, from the Big 12 right now, that in a changing landscape with revenue sharing coming up, football is where the bread is truly going to be buttered, even if you do have opportunities with basketball that some other leagues don't. And Arizona State, with some of their financial issues, would be two schools that I'm sure Yormark wanted to make sure heard this message and that it resonated with them. Wilner continued by saying, which is why the last sentence of the final slide in Yormark's presentation resonated loudly, quote, "We must continue to invest in college athletics." It feels like this in a lot of ways was a Brett Yormark rally. He talks about expansion later on, saying, hey, we will look at every opportunity to make this conference better. And I'll get you the specific quote in just a moment. But it's also, with what we have right now, we've got to continue to push to get better and better so that we don't get left behind, so that we are able to be as competitive as possible. More from John Wilner. This is about, I mentioned the budget issues, the money issues that Arizona and Arizona State have had. The Wildcats reported a slight operating surplus in the 2023 fiscal year, but they needed $44 million in university support to make the math work. So Arizona is having to lean heavily on the university to make things work right now. The Sun Devils weren't any better off. They have a $27 million deficit despite $16.6 million in campus support. So they're $27 million in the red with $16 million already coming in from campus. So yes, these are two schools that, despite their current financial situations, are going to have to push even harder now with revenue sharing on the table. And as John Wilner points out, potentially $30 million a year that you're going to have to worry about in that. $10 million for more scholarships, $20 million for the revenue sharing with athletes if you want to be competing at the highest of high levels. And all of this comes with the backdrop of some other stories this week that emphasizes just how tough the sledding could be for the Big 12, and thus perhaps the impetus for Brett Yormark to be looking in all corners of the world when it comes to realignment and expansion to add and make the conference better, because everybody is going to be hard-pressed to get everything they can out of their athletic departments right now. Troy Dannon is the athletic director at Nebraska. How about these comments that he had this week, that surfaced anyway this week, about what the NIL price tag is going around right now?
Let's talk about what happens in the next 2 years. NIL is not coming in-house. It's going to be replaced by something else. At Washington, our football program last year had an NIL budget of about $10 million and went to the national championship game. Oregon's was 23. Ohio State's is 23. Ours here is not even 10.
And if that doesn't sound like a commitment enough, when we talk about schools having to make massive commitments in their leagues right now just to stay up to date, how about this report about the University of Washington? They just jumped to the Big Ten. They're taking a reduced share. They're not getting a full share. And now this, the University of Washington's athletic department forecasts a cash flow deficit of nearly $30 million for the next fiscal year. It will ask the school's Board of Regents next week to approve a budget that includes loans from three sources: the Big Ten, Fox, and the university's invested funds to cover its costs. That is wild. That's Washington doing that, knowing that that's the only option to try and compete at the highest level. The Big 12 needs their schools to be doing the same. And this is why it seems to me very interesting and of note that Brett Yormark didn't shoot down the idea of private capital, not private equity, but private capital being a potential option in college athletics here. We will see if that's a road the Big 12 wants to push down. And the reason that Big 12 schools might do it, because the league realizes how much they need to be pushing all in to have any kind of shot. And that's why you pursue every expansion option possible. So here are the Brett Yormark comments about expansion. Remember, this has happened now twice in the last 2 weeks that Brett Yormark has talked at least in some way about expansion. He had a conference call last week with a bunch of reporters where he said, quote, "When I took this job, I said the Big 12 was open for business. And I guess you could say we're open for business more now than ever before." Of course, the open for business comment a couple of years ago seemed directed at the Pac-12. The Pac-12 took great issue with it. George Kliavkov came back with some comments that really ruffled some feathers. So hearkening back to that line seems pretty intentional to me. Brett Yormark said the Big 12 is open for business. They took the four corner schools, and now here he is dropping that line again. And we have more comments after that. Of course, those comments were not with the Board of Regents. They were just earlier in the week. He did, by the way, get asked a follow-up question about whether or not he was actively pursuing expansion candidates right then and there. And he said, "No, I'm not. We explore every and all opportunity to create value for our members, for student athletes. It's what we've been doing since I onboarded, and we'll continue to have that mindset." Not a total outright denial, even if he's saying like, "Hey, right now we're not doing this." And again, I would go back to, if he's using the open for business line, he knows what he's doing by using that. And then Yormark talked at the Arizona Board of Regents meeting this past week, and he was asked there about expansion. And this is what Brett Yormark had to say about potential Big 12 expansion to the Arizona Board of Regents. Quote, "I always have optionality as a conference. I will continue when the time is right." Continue when the time is right, man. I mean, that basically is just putting out there like, hey, we are going to have, and the quote, by the way, this is from John Wilner, "I will continue when the time is right," is the end of the quotes. And then Wilner adds, "to offer options to Big 12 board and ADs," which I take to mean offer expansion options there. Offer expansion options to make the conference better. Brett Yormark continues to be not very shy about this at all, and I really like that. Now, I understand this is not necessarily a press conference that was public, but it is at a Board of Regents meeting that he knows is going to, he knew that this would get out there, right? Brett Yormark knew that this would get out there in some form or fashion, and he doesn't care if you think he's a little too brash like the Pac-12 did last year. How did it work out? He wound up taking the schools that were basically forecasted he would take. So right now, you're looking at the ACC at schools like a Louisville, like a Pitt. Beyond that, we'll see like NC State, Virginia Tech. So we'll see how things play out in that conference, but there would be options there. If it works out like it did last time with the Pac-12, that is who would be joining the Big 12 eventually here. And the Big 12 becomes the conference to scoop up everybody that is not in the Power 2. Yormark continues to seemingly just put that out there and not give you coach speak answers, I would say, where he would, much more defer on this. He's telling you, like, yeah, of course we're going to do this. This is what we're going to do as a conference. He's not trying to just shut it away. I think it's refreshing. I respect it. And I think you have to at least put some stock into what he's saying because, like I said, it has worked once before. This is not a guy with no track record. This is not George Kliavkov, who never delivered on his promise. Brett Yormark said, we're open for business. He took the four schools everyone thought he might take, and now he's coming back and saying we're open for business again, and I will continue when the time is right to look at expansion options for this conference. I think you've got to feel pretty good in the leadership from that standpoint, from a big picture standpoint. I like the strategy, but let me know what you think in the comments. If Brett Yormark's strategy in being pretty open about this, if you feel like is the right way to do it, and will things be different with the ACC this time? Are you going to see the Big 12 poach some schools there? Let me know in the comments. If you made it this far, unfortunately, won't be able to go live tonight. That's why I'm giving you this video, but I will go live tomorrow night. So get ready for a live stream tomorrow night. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Typically going live on Sundays and Wednesdays, and those live shows are a blast. If you could like the video, leave me the comments. All of that stuff really helps. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you are so inclined and you want to support there as well. Thanks for watching. Take care, and I will talk to you all soon.